Hey there guys, Dex here. I'm doing a video today because I got sent a couple of drum kits by a company called Donna, which make electronic drum kits. And I've had some questions about these kits and, you know, which kit would be suitable for which kind of person. So I'm just doing a video to demonstrate a few of the little kind of differences between them, the kind of things I'd recommend to people, and just give you a bit of an insight into how these kits work. So the first kit we're going to look at is the Donna DED200, which is more of a beginner level kit, great for younger students or people trying to get into the drums. And then there's the DED200 Max, which is a bit more of a kind of entry-level to intermediate range electronic drum kit, which has a few more bells and whistles, but might not be suitable for people that are just getting into the drums. So first we're going to talk about this one. This is the DED200, and again I'll talk about a couple of the differences between the kits and show you a few things that they can do. So the first thing with the DED200, for a beginner entry-level kit, the first thing that stands out is it does have the mesh heads, which are quite spongy, and again you've got the little lugs here that you can tighten up to make them feel tight or loose, you know, similar to what you'd have on an acoustic drum kit, and you get that much more natural response. Usually on these kind of entry-level kits, you get the rubber pads, which, depending on the kit you've got, some of the rubber pads are really quite hard and quite noisy and tappy. So it's like if I hit the middle of these, the actual sound in the room isn't that massive. But if I actually hit like the side of them, that's a big kind of clack, clack, clack kind of sound, which would is the sound you sometimes get from like the rubber pads. So you get like these hard rubber pads on some kits. So anything with these mesh heads, they're much more softer in the room. If I actually turn off the sound of the drum kit, and you'll just hear this through my vocal mic here. Again, it's not a massively loud kit, you know, acoustically in the room for your neighbor. Some people think, okay, if I get electronic drum kits, it's going to be silent. It's not silent. It still does make a tapping sound, but it's much more subtle, again, in the house, and you're not going to be annoying people as much with this kit. One thing that's interesting as well is on this one you get these bass drum pedals, which aren't like traditional bass drum pedals which have the beta, which is what you do get on the DED200. So you get a slightly different feel, but it's actually a much more quiet response. Great for those beginners or new students getting into it that are really conscious about making too much noise. And again, it gives a good response. I can get a really decent amount of speed on this thing if I'm trying to actually, so like playing groups of two, I can actually still get those groups of two. The pedal slides around a little bit, but usually, and again, this happens on every drum kit, so even big acoustic bass drums, they're moving away. So usually like a block of wood or something or a box in front of that will stop it shifting around, which happens, like I say, with any kit, so it's nothing to do with the pedal, really. You get some that have spikes into the ground, but they can cause damage, but it's just one of those things which you kind of expect because they are lighter things on any electronic drum kit. Anyway, and again, the same kind of pedal that you've got for the left foot, which gives you the hi-hat sound, and then you've got your closed hi-hat and your open sounds as you'd expect. The rest of the kit, pretty good. It does, like I say, everything on the box. The construction of the rack is usually something that I pay attention to when I'm looking into electronic drum kits. And again, it's a fairly sturdy rack. It does the job. So if I hit really hard, and again, I've got everything cranked up, eventually things do start to go down, but like I say, that happens on bigger kits as well. And to be fair, if you're new to the drums, you're not performing, it's more a practice thing. It's like, oops, gone down, you can just pull it back up. So again, that happens on most kits, but if say you're performing and you know you're doing a song in the middle of a song, that'd be a pain. So I wouldn't recommend it as a performance kit, but as a practice tool for new drummers, absolutely sounds great, looks good. So and everything else there, it's cool. The other stuff, they're all single zone triggers, meaning, which again, if you're new to the drums, you're probably not wondering too much about this kind of thing. But on some kits, you can get like 2 sounds from them. They're all single trigger, so you get 1 sound from each drum, which is, like I say, great. That's very similar to what you normally get. There's no choking functionality. So on some kits, you can grab them. On the 200, you can grab it, and it does choke the cymbal and stop it. You can do a similar thing with the hi-hat where you hit the sound, and then you use your left foot to close it like a real hi-hat. So you've got all that nice response. And you've also got dynamic response, which, like I say, some entry-level kits, one thing which I can't stand is when it's just all one volume. So it doesn't matter if you hit softly or loud, you'd get the same sound. But on this one, you can see you've got the soft notes, you've got the high notes there, and I'd say you've got like this kind of, that's your low note, that's your high note. There's a little bit of wiggle room there. As you go into big, more expensive kits, you get even more dynamic range from them. So you've got the soft, from them, but I'm always looking for that kind of that dynamic response that you get from the kit. So there is a dynamic response on this, not what you're going to get on the more expensive kits, but for starters, it's working. So, and again, just little adjustments here or there. The only thing I'd say that holds this back, if you're looking at this one, between this one and the bigger kit, the main thing is that the rack on this doesn't actually go massively high. So for younger students, so you know, kids up to the age of like 10 or 11, absolutely fine with this kit. They're going to be okay. And you can see actually the toms are actually level with my knee when I'm sat down here. And you can't get them any higher than that. You could try and put them on backwards, but there's no rods that they're on. Sometimes you get the rods so you can make them higher or lower. These are pretty much straight onto the rack system, just that. So in terms of height and making them higher, you're going to struggle, say, if you're an adult or a tall player. So that's the only thing that would majorly hold me back from using this kit. But everything else is a practice kit. Absolutely fine. Again, it's nice and quiet. It does the job. And it's cool. It's also got some good sounds. Digging into the module. Again, you get the professional level sounds that you'd maybe use out on a gig. I wouldn't use this for a recording session or for out on a gig, say. But they're good enough to get by in a band practice, say, and to just play along with your friends. I think that's absolutely fine. But usually with all of these kits, again, in these kind of entry level, even intermediate kits, the sounds are okay, but I wouldn't use them for recording. But what you can do is use MIDI, and even these lower end kits, it's got a little USB functionality, so you can hook that up to a VST program and get amazing sounds on your computer. You can still do that with this kit and use it as a controller. You can do it with pretty much any electronic drum kit if you want the sounds, but the ones that are in the modules, usually that's where these things don't sound as great. But if I just give you a little demonstration, if I'm grooving away. So it does the job, so it's fine. You know, for I've got some young kids, and you know, playing on this, playing away, they'd be absolutely fine practicing away. It'd be fine. Maybe for some of the much faster foot techniques and more advanced stuff, you'd start struggling. Like I say, you've not got the choking functionality, which again is fine for, you know, when teaching my students. They don't really need that per se till they're getting around kind of grade 4, grade 5. So it's not a deal breaker for getting into the drums. And because it's a more entry level kit, it's a bit more affordable. Absolutely fine to see if people want to get into the drums. But if they're carrying, you know, say you've got kids that are carrying on and they're really getting serious about it, might hold them back once they get to the higher levels. But, you know, for a few years, it's going to keep them going, which is fine. And again, got the mesh heads. And again, pretty reliable. Everything seems to be working pretty good. You know, I've got no issues with it there. And that there is the DED200. There are some other sounds in it. You've got your click track, so very useful. I always say to people, find that thing because it's very useful for practice. It's got a little recording functionality. There's other sounds as well. So you're going to have, you know, kids can have fun with the. So you can have a lot of fun with that, and there's a whole load of other sounds on there as well for you guys to play around with. But that there is the DED200, and I hope that, guys, gives you a little bit of an insight into how that works. And now I'll have a look at the DED200 Max. Hey there, guys, so this is the DED200 Max kit, and as you can see, quite a considerable difference in size going onto this kit. So if you're a taller student or an adult or a beginner that wants a kit that's going to last them a little bit longer, this is the kit I would recommend. But obviously there's a bit more added to the price tag, but you get a whole load of extra features for that, which is pretty good. Going into the same things I was talking about on the other kit, so you've got the mesh heads, which are much more appealing kind of side to them. You actually get a little bit of a drum shell with some color to it, which is great. And you've got the traditional heads, which again you can tune up, and it doesn't affect the sound, but it affects the response and the feel of the drum. So, you know, these pads a little bit more substantial, plus you've got a little rubber edging on, which adds a little bit more cushioning if you do accidentally hit that. So this kit is actually designated as my daughter's kit. She is on this thing all the time, and she absolutely loves it. But it's, you know, been absolutely great for her. She's doing good stuff in her drumming, and she's not had anything on it that's holding her back. You know, when she gets to a much more advanced level, she might look at something a little bit more with a bit more capacity, but actually she's doing fine with this. And again, for the times I've used it, you know, compared to the higher end kits, there's a few features I'm looking into, but, you know, to be fair, this thing, I quite happily do a band practice on it or potentially a gig. if I just needed to be able to fold this down and stick it in the car. So it takes a much bigger footprint. It's got a much bigger rack. So as you get into the bigger kits, obviously there is that to take into consideration. Whereas with the DED200, you could, fold that down quite small and just tuck it, beside the sofa. You could do a similar thing with this, but it does take a little bit more. Much more substantial kit. You still got the dynamic range to it. And again, slightly more than the DED200, but it's not drastically different in terms of the dynamic range. But with the bigger sizes and the fact that on the drum rack as well, you can see this is on these little poles here, so you can actually bring this thing a lot higher. And again, I'm a 6-foot guy, and I'm sat on a stool here, and these are at a pretty comfortable height. I could actually bring the snare drum way higher as well. But it's got much bigger sizes, so it's got a better feel in that way. You're paying more, so it's going to be a better feeling kit. But if you want something a bit cheaper to start with, then the DED200 has all the main features. This one, in terms of the bass drum, you can see it actually has a traditional bass drum pedal. You can actually swap out the pedal for any other pedal or a double bass pedal if you wanted to get into that. And again, this pad would hold up to that as well. And you can see I can give it really quite a lot of abuse. And you get that normal kind of sway. And again, it's I'm not bashing it, because you know what, you get that on a lot of kick towers, from a lot of different brands. But actually, you're getting a lot out of that for what you're doing. So, but yeah, on the traditional kind of bass drum feel. So this is better for the feel. But again, if I turn off the sound of the drums, because you've got a much bigger kind of pedal, there's a lot more stomping in the room. So I've turned off the sound of the kit now. So again, because it's the mesh heads, you're not getting a massive, and again, this is all just through my vocal mic, but you're not getting a massive sound from this kit other than the bass drum, which is a real kind of hammering sound, which you get like from any kind of kick tower like this as well. It's quite a spongy head as well, so it's, this is probably as quiet as you're going to get from any kind of kits like this. There are on some kits you can get, like on some electronic drum kits, they've got like a little mesh head on it. That drops the sound a bit. There's a bit of stomping. If you put this on, you can get like these rubber foam pads and put them on that to stop the stamping sound. It's not a big problem, but we do hear my daughter kind of smashing away from the other room. And again, it's hearing that. It's similar to what you'd get on a lot of different kits. So, but just bear that in mind. That's where, if you're really conscious of the tapping sound, which again, still nowhere near as nasty as an acoustic kit. But if you're really conscious of the sound, say there's a neighbor on the other wall, that's where the DED200 might be nice, because it's more of a kind of, you can see it here from the hi-hat pedal there, similar kind of stomping on that compared to what you're getting from your bass drum. That is knock knock, hello, is someone at the door. So, and again, but you've got to come to expect that. So that's nothing much to do with the kits. It's more to do with what you expect from the sound of the the acoustic sound in the room. But then with the little rubber things on the edge of the drums here, you're not getting massive sound from that to annoy people. So anyway, bringing the sound back. But again, because you can attach any pedal, it's you can upgrade the bass drum pedal if you're not happy with it. To be fair, it's a pretty good pedal. It's pretty sturdy. Of an intermediate kind of range, but if you ever want to upgrade to anything else, you can look into that as well. But that's good. You can actually just attach any pedal onto this, which I could attach my massive double kick pedal onto this thing and it'd do the job as well. So whereas on the DED200, that's the pad that you've got. You need a new tower if you want to upgrade the pedal. So anyway, other stuff with the kit then. So this one does have the choking ability, which you don't get on the AT. But again, like I say, you don't need that till you get into a bit more of a higher level. But so for new students, it's not something that they're going to need. But as you get into other stuff, you might actually use that in your playing. Like, and then you've got that on there as well. And again, being able to choke both those cymbals can be really quite nice. It just feels a little bit more natural. You're also getting a little bit more of a different sound, so you can actually get a different trigger sound by hitting with the shoulder of the stick compared to the tip of the stick and just where the sensors are. And you can see as I lay into the cymbal a little more, you get more of a crashy sound. So you can crash the cymbals and you can ride on them as well. Very useful because I use my crash. I crash my ride a lot when I'm normally playing. So if I'm playing here, so you got the really kind of sensitive. So again, for a kit of this level, to be able to do that is something I really quite like. And you can get some little swells from them as well, which can be quite nice, just a little more expressive on, and again on the bigger pads as well. You've got a really nice kind of natural sway to them. which feels pretty good. And again, the rack system, you can get things a lot higher on this thing. So that's, again, I'm a bit of a sucker for the, you know, making sure the rack's up to speed. And again, pretty sturdy thing. Again, it's the one on the DED200, still pretty sturdy for what it is. You know, if kids are getting into it, there might be a bit of movement. Again, every so often on this, I do kind of adjust it. In fact, my daughter wallops this thing. It comes loose every so often, but you just tighten it back up. But again, same as you're going to get on most electronic drum kits, to be fair. By the way, if you've got an electronic drum kit, little tip that a lot of people miss, and you're thinking, you know, why is my snare drum moving? It might not be a case of the arms that the snare drum's on. A lot of the time, it's the tubing, and there's a little screw up here, which actually is what you need to adjust to stop it spinning. So you can see that's going like sideways. It's not to do with this adjustment here, it's to do with there. There's actually multiple adjustments to sort these things. You've got one there, you've got two down here, and then you've got one there, and then another one on the back of the pole. So there's actually so many little adjustments. If something's moving on your kit, you might be turning the wrong screw. There's a lot of things to adjust, but I like that there's so many different adjustments there. All of that means I can get this snare drum pretty much anywhere I want to. So it's good. And if you're fussy like me, it's great. Anyway, on to the other cymbals. So in terms of how the hi-hat works, a bit more of an upgraded foot pedal on this one. So there's not much in way of customization on the other one. On the bass drum and on the hi-hat here, you're getting these little spike things now, and you've got the normal kind of slip-proof stuff. But you've got the little spikes which you can kind of make go further down or bring them back up. If you want to stop the thing moving, you've got them on the bottom of the bass drum as well. And then there's a little bit of an adjustment here. You can actually use this little screw to adjust how high the pedal is, and basically when the sensor closes. So you can see I can close that down, and it's hitting the sensor about there, but then I can squeeze a little more, like you would in a natural hi-hat pedal. So you can actually adjust that little screw, and that changes kind of where the feel is. So I believe, so is that fixed in there? So I've seen that before. You'd have to play around with it. But there's those little features which are pretty good. So it is an upgraded hi-hat pedal. And again, you can't get splash capabilities, which you can on more advanced kits. But again, that's nothing that any kind of beginner or intermediate player is really going to need. It's much more of an advanced thing to actually get a splash sound from that. So there are a couple of the things that you'd maybe look at if you wanted to get into a bigger kit, but then you're looking into a much higher budget to get these little extra features, which again, some drummers need, especially if you're in a professional capacity. But again, for practice or for just something at home to play on with, this gets you started, even if you're at a much more advanced level. So anyway, in terms of the module's got a few more features than the DED200, which can be a bit baffling to some new drummers, which is where if you're a beginner or much younger, you know, having an ambient setting isn't something that, you know, younger kids are really going to be that bothered about in terms of how kind of echoey, like. So you can see I've got a much more echoey sound though. That's it whacked up, it's really massive. Or if I turn it off completely, the ambience, it sounds like it's in my living room. So. But just a little bit of presence just makes it sound. So you're starting to get into some little settings which might feel a bit more important if you're looking into recording, but of course you can do the whole MIDI thing. It's got a USB out, so you can do the MIDI thing if you're trying to record onto computers. The other things then that are pretty good in here, you've got bass and treble setting. Whenever I'm performing with electronic kits, that's a really important setting to me, because sometimes it's a little kind of boomy or a little bit tinny, so I've got a really kind of quick adjustment there, which again, handy if you're going to use it for some gigs or a band practice. Same as on the DED200, there is a recording function on both kits, so you can actually hit record and listen back to what you've just played. And then there's a little bit of functionality where you can go through the kit and start trying to change individual sounds. So I will just double check. Yeah, you can do that. So you can go through and rather than changing the whole sound of every drum on there, you could have a kit that you like the sound of, and I could say, well, actually, just the hi-hat. I want to change the setting of the hi-hat. But change just, that is a dirty sound hi-hat. I like that. So you can change just individual sounds. Not something you can do on the other kit, but again, it's not something my daughter's massively got into. When she gets a bit more picky as she gets more into her drumming, might be something she cares a bit more about. So that's where, you know, if you want a little bit more customization, you can get that on this thing. There is a bit more there. In terms of the quality of the sounds, again, Not massively fantastic sounds for, say, recording. If I was going to use this kit for recording, I'd probably look into the VST thing where you kind of plug the MIDI in and you use your laptop or your computer to control them. You can get much better quality samples. But, you know, even people with some of the best electronic drum kits out there, they still do that to try and get those better sounds out of them. But in terms of for practice and for playing, just like quick gigs and practice sessions, you know, I'd be quite happy with these sounds for that, because you're not looking for sound quality per se. You're just looking for something to be able to do a band practice and not throw off the guitarists. So it's very easy to do. They get distracted easy. I can say that. I'm a guitarist. So anyway, there are also a whole load of cool sounds. There's more sounds on here, which are quite nice. You know, you can go into, I mean, what we've got here, so... So there's a little bit more sensitivity. You can see I'm getting a different sound on top compared to if I'm going on the edge. So there's a little bit more functionality there. That's great. Oh, we've got here dance. So there's a little kind of different settings you can play around with, and then a lot of customization you can add to that. So you can make your own kits as you go further into it. You know, there's a load of user kits which, you know, you can start adjusting those and like, well, I want this snare drum sound, I want that bass drum sound. Like same as you would on an acoustic kit, where you might think, oh, you know, I want a different snare drum. So you get a different physical snare drum and put it there. But on this, you can just change the sounds. That's a really good customization option. So it's good. Anyway, I think I've been through most of the things there. Both kits come with a decent set of headphones, which do the job. And then they also come with sticks and a stool and pretty much everything you need to get started. Always look for a complete set when you're looking to get into these drumming things. You don't want to get it home and realize you're missing something, you know, that you need to make it work. But they come with a few different like bells and whistles. And like I say, my daughter's been using this for about 6 months now. And she absolutely loves the thing. She's on it, you know, quite a few times a week. You know, she's doing stuff at school now. So it gives you a little bit of something that you can use. So it's good. But yeah, that's 2 Donna kits. I hope that's given you a little bit of an insight into these ones that I've been using on the videos. You know, they're really kind to send them over to me, and they've proved pretty useful, you know, for what I've been doing, and, you know, especially in a kind of family setting. You know, I have drum battles with my daughter. I'm on my kit in the other room, and then she's in here, and we have our speakers blaring, and we try and out-drum each other, and that's usually quite good fun. But, you know, it's given us something that she can play. And then for younger students, the DED200, I think definitely great kit. You know, it's got everything you need to get started for a new drummer. The only limiting factor is just how high you can bring the kit. But if you've got new kids that are looking to get into drumming, just see if some drumming is something they want to do, I think absolutely perfect for that. And then you set up, and then they could upgrade to something like this in the future, and then from this you can then go on to much more technical kits if you want to go a little bit further with it. But to get started, it's good. All got the mesh heads, you got the dual zone triggering thing, you got the more realistic sound feeling bass drum here, using an actual kick pedal, which I think is really good for foot technique. So for someone that's been playing drums for a while now, I think that's a critical thing. But if you're brand new to the drums and you just want to see if it's something you want to get into, having the pedal that's more of a kind of button type, you can still get a good bit of speed on it on the DED200. But like I say, that one just it's a bit more nice in terms of volume, especially if you've got close by neighbors. You don't want to bother anyone. So it's good idea if you want to get your kids into drumming, but not have a kit that's going to be kind of slapping and slamming around so much like some of the bigger kits. So that's the compromise you get with these things. Anyway, I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into some of the stuff that you can do. I think I've covered everything there. You guys have an absolutely fantastic week, and I'll see you soon.